In my 20 years of working as a doctor doing geropsychology and neuropsychology, I have helped thousands of families help their loved one have better quality of life when they have mild problems or even mild dementia. In today's video, I'm going to cover 8 domains where people have problems in everyday life and what you can do for each one of them to increase independence and decrease frustration. Let's do it. I can't get him to take his cell phone when he leaves the house. He always loses his wallet, and we now have 6 sets of house keys because he keeps misplacing them. It happens to everyone, right? But for Ned, it happened every single time, and multiple times a day. His wife, Claire, was ready to pull her hair out. And Claire wasn't the only one suffering. Ned was a former professor, but he was feeling more and more frustrated with his tendency to forget words, lose things around the house, and never make it to appointments. He was starting to just stay home more. He really didn't want to go to his book club, and he couldn't even really get himself to have lunch or hang out with friends. Ned is in the mild stages of dementia, and both he and his loved ones are feeling the pain. I have a video that walks through the 3 main stages of dementia, and if you haven't watched it yet, it's included in the links below. In the mild stage of dementia, people start having some mild problems, and they really need more structure and support to maintain independence. Problem number 1, details don't stick. Ned keeps asking the same questions, like what they have planned for the day, why they're seeing a particular doctor, or when their grandson's soccer game is. Here's what to do. First, breathe and recognize they're not doing this on purpose. This is no maliciously intended action to drive you crazy by asking the same question 100 times. Often they don't even know they've already asked it. This will help you have empathy for what they're experiencing and be a little less irritated. Next, try having a large whiteboard just for the day. Write all of the important appointments or things that are going to happen for that next day so it's there for easy reference. When your loved one comes to you, you can say, go check the whiteboard, it's all on there. If specific questions keep coming up and you have to answer them over and over again, start an information journal. Now this is basically something like a notebook or a binder that has paper in it, and you start writing down the specific question and the specific answer. Now you try to train your loved one when they come to you with the same question they've asked several times. The training is, go check the binder first. In a lot of cases, people can learn, you know what, I'm going to go ask something, but I should check the binder first because it might already be in there. If they can't remember to check the binder first, it's much easier to say, oh, it's in the binder, honey, and off they go, rather than having to sit and explain the same thing for the 17th time. Only do this as long as your loved one is still able to find the journal and use it to get their question answered. If they need a little training and you work with them a few times to get the hang of it, that's totally fine. But if they aren't able to find it and use it and only get frustrated with your direction to do that, it's no longer useful. Situation number 2, they need more structure to help them function independently. Ned can't track appointments, schedule and execute lunch dates with friends, or plan his day in a way that's useful or meaningful for him. Here's what to do. First, make sure that your loved one has a calendar that works for them. I say works for them because you might have in your mind the perfect calendar. It needs to be this big so you have space to write all the things, or it needs to be portable so you can take it with you. Oftentimes, your loved one will have their own ideas, and I really want as much as you can for you to work with them and honor their ideas, because if you're trying to force your ideas on them, there's less likelihood that it will work. If they aren't using their calendar or their system very effectively, work with them by starting on one thing or one practice and get that smooth before you move on to the next. Sometimes it's just easier for people to have a physical calendar to be able to use, but sometimes they're able to go electronic, which can be much more convenient. Now let's talk about sticky notes. Sticky notes are loved by the world, but in fact, they are little flying demons that start out where they're supposed to go and then end up everywhere but. For the most part, sticky notes are not allowed unless they have a specific purpose, which we'll talk about later in some of the sections, or they're actually organized neatly in a notebook or a binder. Third, schedules are key. What you want to do is establish a schedule for your loved one where there are reoccurring activities most days. This shouldn't happen overnight. Start with one reoccurring activity on one day of the week and get that into the routine so it becomes kind of normal. For example, every Monday morning at 10 o'clock, I go for a walk with June. Wonderful. Now, each week you're practicing going for a walk, 10 o'clock in the morning. It's on the schedule and we do this every week. Once that's part of the normal routine, we add the next thing. Okay, every Tuesday afternoon, I'm going to Tai Chi class. Great. We put that on the calendar and we continue to build. Over time, you're looking for a schedule that contains positive activities on most, if not all, days. Activities should range across a wide variety of types, including things like physical activity, being social in lots of different ways, doing things that are cognitively stimulating, and some things that are just plain fun. Problem number 3. People start losing things more frequently, and they get really frustrated about this. Ned is constantly losing his cell phone, his wallet, his keys, and his glasses. Number 1. Start establishing a home base for the most important things that are getting lost. This is an area of the house that's designated as where the item should live. For things that generally leave the house and then come home, the home base would make most sense to keep it by the front door. So when you walk into the door, there's a space right there and you hang your keys or you hang something else that leaves the house and comes back. You always hang it up right away and then you know where it is when you want to leave the house again. For other things that are used at home, the home base often makes sense to be in the room where the person spends the most time. So if the person spends most of their time in the kitchen and they're constantly leaving their cell phone all around the house in random places, the home base could be in the kitchen in a space that's designated. When you're in the kitchen and you're not holding the phone, it always goes there. Once you have your base established, practice immediately putting the items in its home base whenever they're not in use. When you, as a loved one, find an item that's not in its home base, please do the favor of putting it back in the home base. Although you may prompt the loved one by saying, I found your cell phone over here and it's supposed to live in the home base, you may or may not find that works. If it works and some training makes sense and you can follow the person around, they're going to put it down, remember home base, and you can train your way into success, great. If they can't remember to always put it in the home base, sooner or later you will give up with the reminders because they're only irritating for both of you and you'll put it in the home base anyway. You may want to consider purchasing beepers so you can find lost objects around the house. My significant other loves beepers. So they come with a remote and several little things that you attach to the item that you don't want to lose. He has attached the little item to his cell phone, to his keys, to his wallet, to a number of things, and he is thrilled. Every time, instead of saying, "Have you seen my cell phone around?" he says, "I'll just go beep it." He grabs the remote, which yes, needs to live in the home base so you don't lose that, but he grabs his remote and pretty soon, beep, 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 yes, beep, beep, and he runs off and finds it. It's magical. The technology is getting better and better, so the things that you attach to whatever you don't want to lose are getting smaller and smaller and more convenient to attach. I am linking several options in the description below, so you can check those out if you'd like. Problem number 4. Your loved one can't produce words as fluently, and they're embarrassed or frustrated by this. Ned has started limiting his social contact because he's so embarrassed about this issue. Here's what to do. First, have a conversation with your loved one about what they prefer. When somebody's struggling to come up with a word, some people say, "Oh God, I would love if you would help me out. Please, just fill in whatever it is that you think I'm trying to say, and we can work together, and it's so much less frustrating." That works really well for some people. Some people hate that idea. "God, you're always talking for me. You're always interrupting me. Just give me a few moments and I will come up with it myself." So for those people, they don't want you jumping in. Oh, do you mean this? Oh, I think it's this, because it feels intrusive. For those people, they want space, they want understanding and empathy and a little bit of time to be able to figure it out on their own. Either option works, but if you don't ask, you won't know. Try to learn what your loved one wants and practice using that strategy patiently. If it's not what you've been used to doing, it is going to take some practice for you to learn this new skill. You can also help your loved one come up with a humorous statement or comment that can be used in situations where they can't come up with a word. It might be something like, "Oh God, those words used to be on the tip of my tongue and now they've receded to my stomach." Or whatever works for them. But humor is a lovely way to come together with others and share the experience rather than feeling embarrassed by yourself. Most of us, starting in our 30s and slowly getting worse over time, experience this tip of the tongue thing. So we're all struggling at some level to come up with words that we want. We can bond together on this. You can also remind your loved one that other people really aren't noticing. There's a thing called the spotlight effect, where we feel like there's always a spotlight on us and everybody's paying attention and laughing when we make mistakes. But the reality is, nobody actually cares. Of the 10 people watching this video, ultimately, you probably don't care if I stutter or don't come up with a word fluently. In real life, nobody's paying attention. It's fine. And you are your own worst critic. So practice this. Help people role play by saying, "Hey, let's talk for a little while. And I want you to pay attention to when I don't come up with a word." Overtly don't come up with a word for a bit and ask your loved one, "Did you even notice? Did you care whether or not I was struggling to come up with a word?" The answer is usually no. People don't care in the least, but we are thinking they do. Issue number 5. You notice that people are having a harder time taking their medications accurately. Ned regularly forgets at least one of his medications every couple of days. First, help them establish a system so that they can be more on track. Use a pill organizer and help them come up with a logical way to fill and organize it. You can use natural events to cue taking medications throughout the day. For example, we always take them with breakfast or with lunch or with dinner. It might be you always take your medications when you first get up and you're in the bathroom. You always take them and have them right by your bedside before you go to bed. Timing them with natural events cues us from our environment to not forget. You may want to help your loved ones set up reminders on their phone. This is a wonderful reminder system that many of us use, and depending on your loved one's use of technology and ability to play with it and get used to it, this may or may not be helpful. For some people, it's magical. "I use my reminders for everything," they say. I do too, actually. But once you get used to the idea that your phone is going to tell you when you need to do something, it's a magical thing that can really help quality of life. For other people, this is a huge pain. It doesn't make sense, it's confusing, and they just don't want to do it. If your loved one is using phone reminders, there needs to be a training protocol where the absolute rule is when your alarm goes off, you go and do it immediately. There is no waiting. There is no snoozing. There is no, I'll shut this off and finish what I'm doing and then go do it later, because that's when people forget. As a higher level intervention, you may also want to consider using a pill organizer that is electronic so that it can organize your pills for you as you put them in there, but then it will do an alarm or some type of beep or system that goes off at the time you're supposed to take it. These things are wonderful because they're so irritating. They go and go and go until you stop them by taking out the medications and theoretically then taking your pills. I'll link some options in the description below so you can check those out as well. Issue number 6. Your loved one may find it harder to drive to unfamiliar places or even feel some level of anxiety in familiar driving locations. Ned has expressed frustration and some mild anxiety that he never used to have about driving. Here's what to do. First, discuss the issue openly with your loved one. Find out how comfortable are they feeling in driving to various locations, whether it's close to home, it's farther away, it's on the interstate, it's a long distance. Have this conversation and really listen to what they say. Whenever they aren't comfortable driving to various locations, make a plan so they can be the passenger and they don't have to drive. You can also discuss their comfort with technology like GPS or navigation systems. If it's not already set up in the vehicle or on their phone, do this with them. Take time to practice it together and see if that can work, so that when they're out and about and they start feeling hesitant, aren't sure where to go, they can have this to rely on. You can put in a process where before they leave the house, they always take a sticky note, here's where they come in handy, and write down their destination. They have their destination, they put it on wherever is easily viewable if they have to glance down while they're driving, and they know where they're going. If they have to make multiple stops, this can also be a really helpful way to help them organize the trip so it's most efficient. You should also come up with a safety plan on what they should do if they become disoriented or confused or just really anxious while they're driving. This can include a very simple plan to first find a place where they can safely pull over. Once they've pulled over, they can take some time to breathe, calm down emotionally, and help their thoughts stop racing. They could then have a potential point person to call where they check in, they touch base, they feel better, they get directions if they need to, or they can just get reoriented. And GPS might play a role that once they've calmed down and they're able to reorient, they can use it to return back home or get to where they need to go. Having a safety plan in place really helps people feel more comfortable even if they never have to use it. Issue number 7. They may forget ingredients to a particular recipe, how to make certain things, how to assemble things, how to do stuff in daily life. Ned doesn't cook very often, but when he does, it seems like he's really limited to things like a simple sandwich that he can easily make and eat. Here's what to do. First, discuss this with your loved one. Observe them. See if this is happening for them. There may be certain recipes that they want to make but can't remember easily. In these types of situations, having a little binder or a little recipe organizer that lives on the kitchen counter that has very simple, their basic recipes that they like to use can be a really helpful aid. It's the same thing if they're using technology or a computer and such. If they want to use it, but the steps to do so are getting harder and harder, having a little cheat sheet that lives right next to the computer can be very helpful. Again, you may need to practice using these aids, but once you practice for a bit, it can get easier for a lot of people to use. You can consider establishing a plan where when the stove or the oven are being used, beforehand, they always set a timer. The timer should be longer than they anticipate using the item, but not so long that it's several hours long. Once they set the timer, then they start cooking, they do their thing, and if they forget to shut off the burner or shut off the stove or the oven, this timer will go off and they can be cued to remember to do so. It can help to have a little note by the timer that says, remember to shut off oven, so that they know when they go over to shut off the timer, what is this reminding me to do? If that's not working, you may consider installing the automatic shutoffs for ovens or burners that are available for purchase. I'll link some of those in the description below too. You also may consider making cooking or doing things online a shared pleasure, where you research recipes together, you prepare the ingredients together, and have an experience where cooking or other similar activities becomes more fun because you're shared and you're each taking kind of a team approach to the process. Issue number 8. They may find it harder to plan, organize, and follow through on more complicated things, like making food and serving it for a family gathering, planning a trip over the weekend to go to the beach, or gathering information for the yearly taxes. Ned was really frustrated when it took him more than a month to pull together the bits and pieces that were necessary for their tax preparer. Ultimately, his wife had to help him find the last few things. Here's what to do. First, again, start with a conversation. Discuss whether or not they think this is happening, or you can bring up what you've observed in terms of difficulties in those arenas. They may or may not see that there's a problem. If they don't see the problem, don't insist that it is a problem, but offer things that might make the process easier. You should identify what activities or tasks are most valuable to your loved one and take a team approach to find a way to make those continue to work. For example, meals or gatherings could be broken down into several steps, with your loved one assigned a piece of it rather than the whole event. Packing could be simplified by having checklists for different categories of things that you have to pack for a trip and breaking it down so it's much easier to pack for one category rather than everything at once. Have those things on your computer, and every time you're going to travel somewhere, print off the same packing list and hand it to your loved one. Tax information could be given an organizational structure at the beginning of the year, so that whenever important documents come in or things are received, they could be filed along as you go rather than having to try to find everything at the end of the year. It's important to realize that the decline that people experience in dementia is often slow and gradual. There's no set amount of time that people spend in any given stage, and there's often no clear indicator when somebody's gotten worse. Just when you've adopted to one set of circumstances and set up things so that the person can really thrive and do well, another issue tends to pop up and you have to do it all over again. This can make the work of loved ones or caregivers feel never-ending and exhausting. However, the main point in this mild stage is that with the right patience and support and systems, people can still be independent. That is the point of doing all of this work, because when you set up those systems, you set up the schedule, you help people adapt, they can continue to flourish. So we've covered a bunch of scenarios of what you can do specifically in the stage of mild dementia. But this leaves you wondering, well, what do I do as it gets worse? That's why I've made my next video. It gives you ideas on what to do to support your loved one's health, safety, and quality of life in the moderate stage of dementia. Share these ideas with anyone who might benefit, and I'll see you in that next video. Bye.